Hitting balls out of bounds into water hazards or recovery situations is unsurprisingly the biggest killer of a good golf score. We amateurs know that, but yet we are doing very little to prevent that from happening. But actually there are very easy aiming rules that you can use on the golf course to get fewer penalty strokes, which ultimately leads to a better score. Hi guys, my name is Kevin and I'm normally working in Formula 1 as a data and strategy expert, but probably like you, I'm a very passionate amateur golfer and I was always obsessed with the question, what really does make a good score in golf? And even though I've always been a big stats guy, after reading tons of books, articles, watching videos and doing my own research about course management and golf strategy, I realized I was playing golf all wrong and you're probably too. Obviously in course management we can talk about lots of things, how you can strategically improve your score on the golf course. We can talk about putting speeds, club selection and chipping, optimal aiming for your approach shots, layup strategies, all important things, but nothing is more important than the topic that we cover here in this video. So you don't need to be a big math expert to realize that penalty strokes hurt, but actually if you look closer to it, you see that consequences differ. Because for example, if you hit the ball out of bounds, you not only get the penalty stroke, but you also lose all the distance as you have to hit your next shot from the previous spot again. So actually you're not losing one, but you're losing two strokes. On the other side, we have water hazards where the actual penalty can differ as it depends where you cross the penalty area. So for example, if your ball rolled into the water, there's pretty much no distance loss, so you only need to drop the ball with a penalty stroke, so you actually only lose one stroke here. But if you cross the penalty area at an early point, it pretty much has the same effect like out of bounds. You will lose the distance, but you'll also get the additional penalty stroke. So right now you can see an example from my German YouTube channel where I basically made every course management mistake that you can make. So I hit my tee shot right into the water, but at least I got some distance under my belt. So if you actually do the math, that shot cost me 1.43 strokes. So one full stroke for the penalty and the rest comes from the distance loss as I had to drop my ball in front of the water. Well, in hindsight, I aimed completely wrong, but we will get into that later. And actually, it was just the beginning. Chaos was about to start. So I was hitting my third shot, not an easy one, trying to hit about 225 yards over the water onto a pretty small green. And as you can see, it was absolute mayhem. I ended up playing a 9 on a par 4 and I will explain what I did wrong later as it is a great example how it not works. But for now, I only wanted to show you that these next two shots into the water actually cost me full 2 strokes. So pretty much like an out of bounds hazard as I got the penalty plus the loss in distance. Well, it might sound stupidly obvious, but actually different kinds of hazard have a different consequence on our score and our golf game, so we should treat them differently also regarding our aiming and strategy. Again, it sounds so easy that it is stupid, but actually a lot of amateurs are treating water hazards and out of bounds pretty much the same, although they are not the same in terms of influence on your golf score. So the obvious question is now, what factors on my score do different hazards have and how do I need to adjust my aim and strategy around that? The goal is obviously to choose a target that leads to the best scoring average. But before we can clarify that, we have to talk about shot patterns for a short while because it lays the foundation for what's coming next. So maybe you have noticed it already, you're actually very unlikely to hit your pick target all the time because golf is hard and you will have dispersion. And you will not only have dispersion in terms of direction, but also in terms of distance due to inconsistent ball contact. And another important thing to know is that dispersion is obviously greater with longer clubs and smaller with wedges. I think we all understand this because a 2-degree misalignment of the club face at impact has obviously a greater impact on a 250-yard shot compared to a 100-yard shot. So basically what we are trying to do here with our tee shots is to select a club and target that lead to a shot pattern that fits best into the design of the hole and ultimately leads to the best scoring average. Because with shot patterns, you have no idea which shot of your shot pattern will come out. Yes, you may be hoping for the center, but as I said, it's actually unlikely to happen. So it's smarter to aim not your best shot and the shot you hope for, but to aim your shot pattern. So coming back to hazards, they obviously have an impact of how we are trying to aim our shot pattern because we want to avoid penalty strokes. So let's start with the easiest one, out of bounds. As I already said, nothing is more punishing in golf than hitting a ball out of bounds, as you get the penalty stroke, plus you haven't gotten anywhere distance-wise at all. So the actual penalty is 2 strokes, which means we want to avoid out of bounds at nearly all costs. Wow, what an insight, you might say. But yes, actually most amateurs have no idea how big their shot pattern is, which then leads to aiming issues. Because shot patterns are actually much bigger than you think, so most amateurs, including me, choose a way too aggressive target because they have no idea how big their shot pattern is. So do you know my driver shot pattern size? Well, pretty hard to tell if you don't know my skill level, so I tell you, I'm a low single handicap golfer. I personally tracked all my drives last year on the golf course and my driver shot pattern size is 120 yards. So if I target the middle of the fairway, I could miss my spot from 60 yards to the left to 60 yards to the right of it. Well, you might be saying I'm a bad golfer, which I'm for sure, but if you look at PGA Tour data, the best PGA Tour pros have a driver shot pattern of 80 yards. And I have personally not played a single fairway in my life that is 80 yards wide. Maybe there are some holes and courses out there, but it is for sure not the norm. So I have an example for you from my home course. Hole number 2, which is a 440 yard par 4 down the hill with out of bounds being completely on the right side. So you for sure don't want to hit it there. As I personally know that my driver shot pattern is about 120 yards, my aim is about 60 yards left to the out of bounds stakes, which is actually here. So my aim has nothing to do with the fairway at all. My only goal is to keep the ball in play, and I do that by aiming pretty much straight into the bunker that is in between hole 2 and 3. Yes, I will hit it in the bunker here and there, and I will also hit it in the semi-rough very often, but these are not really hard shots, to be honest. And I will for sure hit the neighboring fairway many times, but I also don't have a problem with that because the shot from there is actually also not that difficult. So the worst thing that could actually happen with that aim is if my ball would stop right in front of a single tree, which is actually very unlikely to happen. Well, now you might be saying, okay, sounds good, but what should I do when I have out of bounds on both sides and I can't just back out of it? Well, you can actually do a calculation which club and shot pattern ultimately leads to the best average score, but it would blow the video out of proportion, so I won't get into detail as much. So there's a basic rule that says, if the hazard stays in play, even if you hit a 3 wood, 5 wood, 2 iron or even 4 iron, then hit the longer club because you will not remove the hazard. And of course you will be more accurate with longer irons off the tee, but data actually says that on average it won't equal the loss in distance. So when you pick a 2 iron instead of a driver, you will have the distance loss every time, but actually you won't hit your driver every time into out of bounds. So the rule for out of bounds is pretty clear. It should be avoided at all costs, which could even mean aiming in the middle of the rough, which sounds stupid but actually makes sense data-wise. So if we're coming back to my example from hole number 2, I'm trading misses here. I'm trading the bad right miss into out of bounds to the better left miss in the semi-rough, the bunker or the neighboring fairway. So the trade is worth it. I'd rather be there than lose 2 strokes. So the next most dangerous hazard is the penalty area. So I think the basic aiming system is pretty clear now. We are now only adjusting it for penalty areas. So let's look back to our example from earlier and begin with the tee shot. Obviously it was a massive aiming mistake as I was aiming way too much to the right. You can't see it here, but I was aiming slightly left of the center of the fairway. But as you can see in the drone footage, there was enough room on the left to bail out. So the rough actually looks deeper than it was, and being in there would have definitely been better than being in the water. Only the trees on the left would have been a problem. That's why I chose the 3 wood instead of the driver, which was actually correct because I couldn't get it there. So my ideal target should have been somewhere around here, so pretty much the first cut line, so probably 15 yards more to the left than my actual target. And I was playing the round with my friend who actually got it right on that hole. He also did not hit his target as he pulled his shot, but his second shot was not in a bad place, although sadly he also couldn't hit the green, but at least he made bogey and not a quintuple bogey like me. So what's still missing is the explanation of how I should have hit my third shot after I hit my tee shot into the water. And as I said earlier, shot pattern don't just mean lateral dispersion in terms of direction, but also vertical dispersion in terms of inconsistent ball contacts. So in my case, I was scared I would hit my 5-wood over the green, so my plan was to hit the 3-iron that was supposed to land at the beginning of the green and roll to the hole. I caught the ball too high on the club face, so it wasn't a massively bad ball contact, but it was just enough so my ball landed in the water. So what was my mistake? I was planning for my best shot and not for my average shot. Actually, my 3-iron shot pattern in that situation would probably look like this. As you can see with that club selection, I probably shouldn't have been surprised with the result. So the 5-wood was the next longer club in my bag, which I chose now for my then 5th shot. So my first try was very bad as I completely skied it, so it actually was a bit of an outlier shot. So I kept the 5-wood for my 3rd try and I finally had a normal ball contact, which worked out. So I still didn't hit the green as it was too long, the scenario that I feared a bit with that club, but it was definitely a way better miss than my water ball. So to illustrate this again, here you can see my projected 5-wood shot pattern for that shot, and as you can see it looks way better even if I miss now more shots long and short side myself. So of course in hindsight now it sounds easy, but in that moment it's actually pretty hard because you need to have the awareness which shot pattern actually leads to the best result. So what can we do to hit less balls into the water? So first of all, as I said, you have to be aware of the different consequences. Some penalty areas are more dangerous than others, even if they are geographically the same. Because I hit all my 3 balls into the same water hazard, but actually the water was more risky for my 3rd and for my 5th shot compared to my tee shot because it had a bigger influence on my score. So the key is to even realize that penalty area and penalty area aren't even the same. So that means you can be more aggressive with less risky penalty areas, but on the other side you have to be more careful with penalty hazards that actually have the same consequence like out of bounds. So there are 2 hazards remaining where you can lose your ball, either hard roughs or trees. And I think we can keep that pretty short. Obviously there's always a chance that you find the ball, so it isn't as bad as your out of bounds hazard, but it should be probably treated like the water hazard because there can be differentiations. So the deeper the rough gets, the more you can treat it like a water hazard or maybe even out of bounds hazard, so you need to be more conservative. And the same accounts for trees. So the denser the forest and the more unlikely you are to actually find the ball and even to get it out there, the more conservative you need to be. But on the other side, you definitely shouldn't panic to hit your ball into semi-rough or even normal rough, and also when you see some small trees, they're not a big problem. But there's actually one more important thing to say. So there will be golf holes where hazards just simply stay in play. So your strategy should not be to avoid every hazard at all costs, as this is simply not possible. But what you should do is to think more in terms of shot patterns. So ask yourself which club and which target will lead to the best scoring average. So if I hit 100 balls here, which shot selection would ultimately lead to the best score? So I hope these rules and tips helped you, and if that's the case, make sure to like the video. And if you've now realized that this topic could be important for you to become a better golfer and lower your scores, then make also sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future tips about course management. So subscribing is absolutely for free, and you best start with one of my latest videos where I explained the practical application of shot patterns for your approach shots. Because if you're always aiming for the pin, data actually says you're giving away 3 strokes per round, so don't do that. So make sure to click on that video.